Labadiena! In this episode, I'm gonna be making this lovely tandem. And honestly, this was one of the simplest projects I've ever built, but on the same token, it was hell of a fun. So I guess, let's jump right in. About a year ago, I received a message from one of my most loyal customers saying that they have a silver spruce trunk in their yard and they can give it away for me. So I quickly acted on that. This was a freshly cut tree, so I took it to the local sawmill and they milled this square beam. And at that time I didn't know what will I do with it, so I just brought it into my workshop and placed it on the highest shelf to let it dry completely. And now it was a perfect time to put it to use. And as you can see, silver spruce is really light once dried. I have no problem moving it around with a single hand. And if there's anyone who don't know what am I doing with this machine, I will quickly explain that it creates a flat surface and then I can raise that flat surface against the fence and create a perpendicular surface to it. And then I have to move to this thickness planer, and this machine basically copies and creates a parallel surface from the freshly made surfaces we did on the previous machine. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, it's ridiculously simple and it's an everyday process for a woodworker if you start from a rough sawn lumber. And to put it even simpler, I basically smoothed the sides and re-squaring the beam. And now it's time to chop the beam into shorter pieces. I'm not gonna lie, I'm really fortunate to have a panel saw with this giant blade and sliding table. So it made an ease of chopping this beam into shorter pieces. But even with this machine, the blade wasn't big enough to cut the beam with a single pass, so that's why I placed a stop fence and made two cuts meeting in the middle. Once I had all the pieces prepared, the next step was obvious: to glue these together. And first of all, I thought maybe to glue these in two stages, but then I realized that it's only 4 pieces and I don't need to overcomplicate this step. So yeah, basically applying enough glue and placing enough clamps. That's how it usually goes. And just as usual, my wood pieces haven't aligned perfectly, so there was quite a bit of sanding to do. But like I mentioned before, this the silver spruce is really soft, so it didn't took me too long to even out the sides. Every single piece had at least 2 long cracks, and I really encourage this character. I like the appearance, but the problem is that it's not very convenient because you can get splinters from it. So I really took my time and dulled all of the sharp corners and removed all the loose bits from those cracks. And at this point I could easily stop and apply the finish, but I thought that it is missing some extra touch. So I decided to add a couple of bow ties on this smaller piece and only a single bow tie on the larger piece. If I would have added the necessary amount of bow ties to stop the cracking of that larger piece, I think I would have overdone it and it wouldn't look too sexy. Anyway, it's just my thoughts and that's what I'm about to do. So as you can see, I've made some templates from the paper. I looked at the scale of those, and once I approved the design, I've glued those on some figured wood piece. I'm not really sure what kind of wood I'm using, but anyway, I've cut those bow ties on the bandsaw and clean these pieces with a chisel, because I'm not that really good using a bandsaw. I usually misalign my cuts, so some chisel work is absolutely necessary in this case. I guess I'm not going too deep into explaining how to properly inlay a bow tie, but basically what I like to do is apply some double-sided tape on the bow ties I created and stick those into the proper locations, and then I use some fresh utility knife blade and score the edges of those bow ties. And once I have those sharp and crisp lines, I remove the bow ties and start hogging the material. And if the bow tie is really tiny, I usually grab a Dremel tool and hog away most of the material with this machine, or I skip this step entirely and I just go ahead and start chiseling the hole for the bow tie. Even though those bow ties were fairly tiny, I decided to go with the Dremel tool and this needle router bit, just because I knew that this material is very soft and I'm not gonna snap the teeny tiny router bit. And the biggest benefit I find using a router as a first step for the inlay is that it creates a flat surface on the bottom, and it's a great reference when chiseling the sides, and it ensures a cleaner fit of a bow tie. And of course, one of the last steps is to apply some glue and hammer the bow tie in place. A standard way, if you will, of finishing the bow tie would be to cut it flush with the surface and sand it even. But I decided to leave it proud. I've applied a bit of a chamfer on those sharp edges, and I think this made the insert pop even more, and I think it's a really lovely touch to the design. Inlaying those other two bow ties took no time whatsoever, and the project was almost finished. All was left to do is apply some oil, and I chose to go with Rubio Monocoat just because I had it on hand and it smells great. And as you can see, I haven't used any measuring tool or technique to know how much of accelerator should I add, just because it's not necessary at this point. I could have used just a pure oil without any hardener and it would have worked just fine, but I decided to add at least a little bit just for extra protection. Even though it was a really short project, but I had a blast every single moment. It felt like a sort of meditation. Anyway, I think the outcome is really lovely, and just to clear some things out, I would like to say that it's not gonna be used as a butcher block. It's just a decoration for interior to bring some warmth into the space. Anyhow, sincerely thank you for being with me, and I really hope to see you on the next video. Bye bye!